Hi everyone, it's Miss Brenner. I'm here to go over your Week 7 agenda with you. I hope you are all doing well and staying happy and healthy. I do have a little bit of a new format that I want to try with you. We are looking at our Week 7 expectations. As far as this module for Week 7, our overview is that students are learning to continue to use their literary lens notes to help support their understanding of different literary lenses and begin reading stories of the science and technology fiction category. So we are going to continue on now looking at some new content as far as science and technology, and we are going to continue to use the different literary lenses that we have. As far as module objectives, students are going to know literary terms, literary lenses, the definitions for those lenses, and elements of plot. Elements of plot is not something that we specifically covered notes on, but at this point in your education, you should understand how the elements of plot work. Students will be able to identify characters based on plot moments, reference characters by name, identify and analyze characters with bias and empathy, and use lenses to analyze the text. Essential questions: how can literary elements be analyzed through a specific lens to create meaning? And how can characters be broken down to fit a deeper, more complex purpose? Alrighty, so as we look at our Schoology page for Week 7, we have several different activity folders. Activity 1 is about time travel. So we have a short ed puzzle that goes over, is time travel really possible? So this is continuing with science and technology. You have 3 different short story options. So you are going to be reading one of these 3 different options. The first one is A Sound of Thunder. This one has to do with traveling to the past. So if that interests you, I do recommend this story. It has a very interesting narrative. However, it's pretty predictable. So if you were looking for something a little bit more original, I would read Time Locker. If you like Interstellar or different movies that just have a more interesting scientific take on time travel and just interdimension travel, I would look at Time Locker. It's a very interesting short story. It has some new perspectives and interesting characters. It is a little bit more adult, so please just keep that in mind if you choose to read that the way that they talk to other characters and the content is more adult than in A Sound of Thunder. If you are not a science fiction fan and you prefer fantasy more, As Good as New is a good option for you. It is not going to stick to scientific expectations of time travel as rigidly as A Sound of Thunder or Time Locker are. This one is definitely more fantasy. So if you like that kind of concept, you might like As Good as New better. So those are your 3 different options for Activity 1. Activity 2 builds on Activity 1. You will find our worksheet for the 3 different story choices for time travel options, foreshadowing, and literary lens chart, which looks like this. So it's similar to the worksheet you were already working with, where we are looking for 5 examples of foreshadowing and 5 examples of literary analysis using literary lenses. At this point, we can use all of our lenses, so we can use gender, psychological, new critical, and classist for these stories. Some lenses fit better for some stories. Time Locker really doesn't have any female characters in it, and neither does Sound of Thunder, but that doesn't mean that the gender lens can't be applied. When we have only one gender of characters recognized in a story, I do think that that leads to an interesting dynamic as far as personality traits, and that also pairs well then with the psychological lens. So those would be great things to consider. If you like more traditional views on stories, such as looking for theme, looking for symbolism, then New Critical would probably work really well for all 3 of the stories. And as far as classist lens, I think it works really good for Time Locker. As far as for A Sound of Thunder, I might stay away from the classist because there's just not as much detail in that story to work with the classist lens, but that is just my opinion. Alrighty. And then we also have a discussion. So our discussion is right here. I found that A Sound of Thunder and Time Locker are more close in genre, so I put them for part A of this question, which is based on your reading between those two stories. Do you think the telling of the story upholds your expectation of time travel? Explain your vision and how these stories support or negate this view. And then for B, because As Good as New is kind of in its own category, do you think the telling of this story upholds your expectations of genies and wishes? Explain your vision and how this story supports or nullifies this view. In all three of these stories, the protagonist finds themselves in a difficult situation, either due to their own selfish actions or due to the greed and selfish nature of humanity. Based on this common theme and evidence from the stories, do you think that some powers, or whether they are technology-based or supernatural-based in fantasy, are beyond the capacity of moral responsibility for the human psyche? And then lastly, do you think that there is any proper use of plausible situations where these powers, whether it be time travel or wishes or fantasy or technology-based invention, could have a positive impact on society? Use examples from the story to explain your support of the story's ending or your preferred ending to the story. So that is our discussion for the time travel options for activity 2. We then have our creative writing. Our creative writing for this week, your options: write about a character who goes to or purposely avoids their high school reunion. Write a post-apocalyptic thriller. Write a character passing down their favorite childhood toy to a new generation. Or write about someone who has a superpower. Once again, there is our weekly competition. That is not through our school. I don't run it. But if you really enjoy writing and want to participate, this is always a great option. And then you just copy and paste your entry into this document so I also get to read it. Alrighty, continuing on for activity 3. We are now moving from time travel into teleportation. And the question of, will we ever be able to teleport? We are going to be reading The Jaunt by Stephen King. If you are a Stephen King fan, you might know that he writes a variety of different genre-styled stories. He mostly does, or at least is most popular for horror. The Jaunt is definitely a more adult story and can have some horror-like elements in it. However, it is definitely a science fiction rounded story. And so we are going to be starting off with part 1 of The Jaunt for activity 3. And then we have a similar worksheet with The Jaunt with foreshadowing and literary lenses. So just like the other one, we are looking for 5 examples of foreshadowing and 5 examples of literary lenses for The Jaunt. We also have the PDF for The Jaunt in case you like to read while listening to the Edpuzzle. Then we have part 2 of the Edpuzzle for The Jaunt. The Jaunt is a little bit of a longer story, and it does kind of jump around, but I do give notes in the Edpuzzle to let you know when it's jumping from current time to past to help you understand the story better. If you are a huge fan of teleportation, and I mean beyond just The Jaunt, like superheroes or like the power of teleportation and things of that nature, maybe you really like X-Men and the Nightcrawler, I did pop in a video as well. This is not a requirement, but if you really like teleportation, I do recommend this video. It's very interesting as far as the scientific breakdown as to why you might not want to be able to teleport as a superpower, just in case that is something that interests you. And then we have our discussion for The Jaunt. So based on your reading of The Jaunt by Stephen King, do you think the positive advantages of a device like The Jaunt outweigh the dangers of the teleportation device? Explain your opinion and use references from the story as evidence. How does Stephen King use his unique writing style and foreshadowing elements to create suspense in this story? Were you surprised by the ending of the story? Use examples from the story to exemplify moments that begin to send warning signs to you as a reader that help you to predict the ending. And then you're going to comment on one other student's post in a etiquette appropriate manner, reflecting on the events of the story The Jaunt by Stephen King. Alrighty. We have our silent reading reflection. Our silent reading reflection for this week is to identify some form of foreshadowing within your silent reading selection and make a prediction as to how this will impact the story. and then comment on one other student's post in a netiquette appropriate manner. Remember, you should be silently reading about 15 minutes a day at minimum. You can read anything that interests you. The silent reading is not like that you have to be reading something that I require. You could read a comic book. You could listen to a book on Sora. You could look up more science fiction short stories on YouTube and listen to them. But we are finding something that we want to silently read. Lastly, I know not all of my online students are 11th and 10th graders. However, all students will need to complete this assignment, which is for our AI in the modern world. So this is a reflection on last week's reading as far as Mika models and cat pictures, please. So for college and career readiness, we are looking at AI in the modern world and talking about what we expect to see in the future and predicting guidelines that we should really put in place, because as we move on into the future, maybe you were hoping for teleportation to come sooner or time travel, but really AI seems to be the most likely thing that we are going to move towards. And so we're reflecting on guidelines that we as a community should put into place to keep our society safer. So this assignment is a reflection on that. If you are a senior, you still need to complete this document. However, you do not need to put it in your portfolio. If you are in 10th or 11th grade, there is a how to put the document in your college and career readiness portfolio video right here. So that way you can upload the document to your portfolio, which you will need to do for your Block 3 teacher. I'm not sure if your Block 3 teacher is an online class like this or in person. However, your Block 3 teacher will be checking your portfolio to see that this is uploaded. So please make it easy for your Block 3 teacher. I have the video right here. Once you have completed this, put this in your portfolio so that way it can be easily found. Alrighty guys, that is all of our assignments for this week. I hope you guys are all doing well and staying happy and healthy. If you have any questions for me, please send me an email. I'd be happy to help. Alrighty guys, I'll talk to you later. Bye.